he used to rent out the Memphian Theater after midnight, after the theater would close, because Elvis was very nocturnal. So he would rent the theater out and screen movies. That's before people had screening rooms. But we met, I was in the theater. He walked in the side door, he didn't walk in, he burst in the side door with a black suede cape on, high collar, red satin lining, black flared leg pants with
like
a red piping.
Hell yeah.
So he looked very much like Dracula. In fact, I mentioned that to him. I said, we're kind of dressed like Dracula tonight, aren't we? So I think he rather enjoyed my humor right off the bat. And, we were kindred spirits. The moment we met each other, it was like we had known each other all our lives.
That must have been unbelievable, because here you are, a local girl from Memphis. You'd never met him before, right? And he took an instant liking to you guys. And I think, as you say in the book, you were pretty inseparable for several years then.
Yeah, 4.5 years we lived together, and I went on every tour with him. Went to Vegas with him every time he performed in Vegas, and he was a very, very affectionate and very needy person. He wanted me with him 24/7, especially the first year and a half that we were together. After that, we would take breaks, and I'd be away from him for a few days at a time, during which I'm sure there were other women always. But,
well, it's
Elvis.
That had to be really weird for at the time. I think you're 22 years old for an independent girl who's starting to make her way in the world to all of a sudden be wrapped in this
Just
Elvis
thrust into
cocoon where your life is no longer yours. I mean, you're with the biggest celebrity on the planet at that point. That had to be a difficult transition. And like you said, he was very, very possessive.
Very possessive, very needy, but I was just desperately in love with him. He was just also the most charismatic, incredible man I'd ever met. Very, again, inordinately affectionate and loving and kind and generous and sexy, just incredibly beautiful physically, but as well spiritually. He was just, we connected on so many, many levels. And I very willingly did just kind of entrust my life to him. And again, I write about it in the book that I don't think I've ever loved, other than my sons, that unreservedly. You love your children like that, unconditionally. But with Elvis, it was my first love, and experientially, I was younger than I was chronologically. I'd grown up very sheltered, Southern Baptist background. My parents didn't even keep alcohol in the house. So, I had no exposure to a lot of the things that I was suddenly exposed to with Elvis.
Well, Elvis is very well known. There's been so much written about him, books and movies, everything. Very well known for his gift giving. Did you hang on to any of the gifts? Do you still own any of the things that he gave you? Some of the jewelry?
So much so that I've recently been thinking about having an auction like Julian's auctions or Sotheby's or Christie's, because one of his biggest admonitions to me was, honey, an object is not beautiful if no one sees it, which, it makes total sense. And I don't wear the jewelry that he gave me. I have so much jewelry, and it's all in the bank. I keep it in the safe deposit box. It's not my lifestyle now,
Yeah. Have you ever appraised it? Have you ever had it appraised?
No, not really. But, I feel like someone should be enjoying it, because it, again, is not my lifestyle to flaunt that kind of jewelry. I don't wear it. It sits there in a dark safe deposit box in the bank.
Wow.
So I'm really thinking about divesting myself of a lot of that, because it just doesn't suit my life anymore. And I think someone should be enjoying it. So, yeah, I've kept almost everything that he gave me. And it's interesting, my sister-in-law and I, my brother Sam was a bodyguard for Elvis. And we were talking about how, purely we thought then, because living with someone as I did with Elvis for 4.5 years, I definitely have many mementos. I have some furniture from a house that he stored furniture and gave me some when I had an apartment here in L.A. early on. And, of course, the jewelry and some clothes and things like that. But, when you think about all the things that I could have kind of garnered in that 4.5 years had I been thinking in a mercenary way. And I guess that's part of the reason he loved me, because he knew I didn't think that way. Now, as I'm, much older and I see how many people have, taken things and kind of and sold them through eBay or whatever, I think, wow, I could have kept DNA, for God's sake.
Sure. Yeah.
We could have cloned him.
Hell yeah.
That'd be fun. Hey, another thing everybody knows about Elvis is that he was quirky in many ways, and you were with him during those interesting years where he was into the karate, the kung fu films. He brandished a pistol from time to time.
Sure.
He was known to do that. He also had the badge from Nixon. What were some of your experiences with kind of that quirky side of him?
Well, quirky, dangerous.
He almost killed you once, Linda.
He did. Well, he almost shot me. Hopefully, it wouldn't have killed me, but
right.
That's something that we'll never know. But yeah, I was in my dressing area in Las Vegas, and I just got out of the shower, and I have a towel wrapped around my head and towel wrapped around my body, and I just walked past where a bullet flew seconds later, and I felt the swish. I felt the air.
Wow.
I heard ping, ping, and felt the air by my legs, and the glass shattered on the bathroom door and shattered again outside on the closet door. And one of the guys who worked for Elvis ran to the door and said, "Linda, are you okay? Are you in there?" And I said, "Yeah, what was that?" He said, "Oh, Elvis was just having the boss was just having a little target practice."
The boss.
I said, "What?" And I looked over at the toilet paper holder. If I had been sitting there, it would have gone through my legs because the toilet paper holder was, of course, metal, and the bullet went right through the metal toilet paper holder and past my legs standing there at the sink, and then shattered the glass door, shattered another glass door outside before it, came to a stop.
King.
So I went out and railed on him. What are you doing? And he was just ashen. He was just horrified.
I'm sorry, Mama.
He was, yeah, exactly, honey. I didn't. I just wasn't thinking, honey. Really, you could have killed me while you weren't thinking. Yeah, this is not a toy. Put the gun away.
Oh, King.
But he would do things like that. He even had me shooting in a closet one time. He was teaching me how to shoot, and
in the closet.
Sure.
In a closet, yeah.
People do weird things
really?
in closets. You wouldn't believe some of the stuff I've heard.
Yeah, I know, right? But yeah, he was we can call it quirky if you want. He was a little dangerous.
Yeah.
He had an ID bracelet. On the one side, it said Elvis in diamonds, and you flip it over, and it said crazy.
Nice.
But, he was mostly crazy in the best way and a little bit crazy in a dangerous way.
Well, I'm sure these stories were not funny at the time, but I got to tell you, I laughed out loud so many times reading some of these Elvis stories, especially when he buys you, when he's all excited, comes in, "Linda, honey, get down here. You're not going to believe this." And he's bought you a yellow Pantera car.
The Pantera.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he decides to take it for a spin around the block. He comes back. He's like, "Oh, man, it's too much car for you. You can't have this car."
Right.
And
Honey,
then
you'll get killed in that car.
Yeah, you'll kill yourself in this car, Linda. Yeah. And so you guys take it out one night, and
it wouldn't start, right? Yeah. So you got pissed at the car.
We were going to take it out one night. We were going to go to the movies. And so we all the guys, of course, were getting into their little caravan of cars, the bodyguards and, all the valets and everybody, all the guys. He traveled with an entourage of 13 people. In fact, my son, Brody Jenner, said early on when he discovered, that I had dated Elvis and lived with him for a long time, he said, "Mom, Elvis was the original pimp daddy, wasn't he?" He said, he had the original entourage and the bling and all that.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, these 13 guys were all getting ready to get in their cars, and Elvis says, "Honey, let's take the Pantera." And I said, "Okay." So I get in the car, and I'm sitting there, and he gets in, tries to start the car, and it's, wouldn't start, tries it again, Tried it 2 or 3 more times, but meantime, the expletives were flowing, and he had like such a foul mouth when he, very, I don't know if you've been around Southern people when they get
we're
really
we're just as bad, Linda. I believe the quote in your book is he gets out and says, "You goddamn piece of shit motherfucker," and he's livid.
Yeah, I believe that was
he's livid.
There were a few more expletives, but he said, "Honey, get out of the car," and started pulling the gun, from his waist. He always had a gun on him. I said, no, come on, really? Let's take another car. We had, a fleet of cars. And he said, "Get out of the car, honey. I'm not going to tell you again," and step away. So I got out of the car, stepped back, and my first thought was, God, I hope he doesn't hit the gas tank. The car might have exploded, And he shot the car 5 times. Oof. And the guys were all going, "No, boss, no, E-man, please, no," because they love the car. And one of the guys, a guy named David that worked for him for a while, who drove a Corvette, got in the car, and it started right up. It was like even the car said, "All right, boss." I get it now.
Doesn't that car sit in a museum now?
Yeah, it does.
With the bullet
It's
holes,
somewhere.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe the Peterson Museum, I think, so, or one of those.
The other story with Elvis involving a gun that has been told over the years, but you for the first time as a witness that was there, tell an amazing story, hilarious to me, about when Robert Goulet, when you guys are laying in bed watching Robert Goulet on the TV, man.
Yeah, Robert Goulet came on, and he was singing something from Camelot, and he just said was not in the mood. It's not that he didn't like Robert Goulet, and not that he didn't appreciate the quality of his voice. He just was not in the mood to hear that song at that moment, and he said, "Honey, step out of the room." And he got the gun off his nightstand. So I said, "Honey, let me change the channel." He said, "Honey, you heard me. I'm not going to repeat myself. Get out of the room."
Close the door.
Get out of the room and close the door. So I finally just, acquiesced to his demands.
Sure.
Stepped out of the room, closed the door, and I heard boom, boom, boom. And I came back in, and he said, "Get this piece of crap television out of here and tell the boys to bring me a new one. I need a new one."
And what was your reaction to stuff like that? Did you laugh or were you frightened?
I kind of did because, I loved him so much, and I thought he was so crazy and funny and generous. And I just always thought, if something gets broken, even if I got broken, I thought Elvis could fix me.
Well, as most people know, the story with Elvis obviously turns tragic with his drug use that ended up taking his life. There were some moments, and I'm curious if you remember something like this. I wanted to play a rant that we used to play on a radio show I worked at years ago all the time, and I think it's when he's in Vegas performing, and drug rumors are starting to circulate, and he takes offense at it. If you can hear this, Linda, I'll play it for you. I'm sure you might remember it.
So I told him earlier, and don't you get offended, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking to somebody else. If I find or hear the individual that has said that about me, I'm going to break your goddamn neck, you son of a bitch. That is dangerous. That is damaging to myself, to my little daughter, to my father, to my friends, my doctor, to everybody, my relationship with you, my relationship with us on the stage. It is dangerous. I will pull your goddamn tongue out of the roots. Thank you very much.
Do you remember that?
I do. I mean, I don't know why I'm laughing now. I guess just because
it's funny.
I do remember that so well, and it was such an irony because, of course, he was, was probably high on drugs that night.
Sure.
And the tragic thing is, I mean, it sounds, ironically humorous, when you hear him now, and the profanity and just the violent nature of rip your tongue out by the root,
Yeah.
It's your really, honey.
Yeah.
But that's but that was Elvis through and through. And again, a lot of fans don't want to reconcile their minds and their hearts to that was a facet of who he was as well, that kind of violent tendency and the temper that he had, and the irony of being addicted to drugs and not admitting it. And it's too bad there weren't the plethora of rehab facilities that there are today, because there was nowhere to go for him to get help, really.
Well, he did have Mrs. Cock and Mrs. Seaman come over and sit at his bedside when he was trying to kick painkillers, right?
Well, they were the two nurses who came home with us from the hospital.
Sure.
There was a Dr. Knott and a Dr. Fink as well. Dr. Knott and Fink were the two doctors in the hospital who really helped him the most. We were like 2 or 3 weeks in the hospital during that stint, and Dr. Knott and a Dr. Fink really helped him to withdraw from some of the addictive medication that he was on, which was Dilaudid and Demerol and, some opiates. And so they helped him with that. And then they sent Mrs. Cock and Mrs. Seaman, and you can't make that up. That's ridiculous.
That's awesome.